even though there are commissioners in attendance. We did publish that there might be a quorum, so that way they could come and observe as much as possible. But tonight's all about getting to show you this project, explain the project a little bit, get some components from it, get some feedback from your neighborhood, learn some things. I'll start off by saying we're not going to have all the answers tonight because we haven't gotten into the design of the project yet. The project is really just getting started right now. But we do have a little bit of information that we put together through a feasibility study and an engineer's report. There should have been a handout that everybody got as they walked through the door. If you did not get that, just let us know. We can get using that. It's got a couple of QR codes that takes you to the city's webpage where you can take a look at some more information at your leisure. So feel free to use that. The other thing I'd say is there is a sign-in sheet that's here somewhere. That's right over there, actually roaming around. So if you get a chance to, before you leave, if you could, please make sure you sign the sheet. That's just for us to track who is here in case there's people that aren't able to make it and want some information and things of that nature. So again, welcome. Tonight we're here for talking about Improvement District 3006. Again, it's a neighborhood informational meeting, and we got a PowerPoint that just went dark on us. But what I'd say is that we've got. I'm Dan Hansen. I'm the city engineer, and with me Jerry Wallace. He is our assistant city engineer with community development and construction. So Jerry will be overseeing the project once it gets into construction. And also with us is More Engineering. More Engineering is the consultant that the city has hired to proceed with the design and construction administration of the project. And so More Engineering, there's three people here, several other people here other than that, but Matt Krokniak, he's the project manager for More Engineering. Brandon Smith, he's the unknown stuntman that makes him look good on the big screen that does all the hard work. Anyways, he's instrumental in the design of the project. And then Levi Hansen over there. Levi is the project coordinator, and you all received a couple different letters, one talking about some temporary construction easements that we're looking at getting, and another one letter that you should have received, obviously, to invite you to the meeting this evening. So with that done with introductions, I'm going to turn this over to Matt Krokniak to take us through more of the technical side of the project, a little bit of the project description, and then I'll come back up to kind of wrap things up after he's done.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to stand back here so I can run the slides at the same time. So Brandon, let me know when to go forward and whatnot. All right, so a little overview tonight. We're going to talk about just the background and backstory of the Westwood neighborhood, how this project kind of came to be and came to fruition. Some of the existing infrastructure deficiencies that have been identified, how it relates to the city's capital improvement plan, and more specifically the core area improvement plan, the recommendations or proposed improvements of the neighborhood that you're all kind of wondering what's going to happen with the project. Then Brandon will share some information on some general discussion related to construction impacts and what it's going to look like for you as a homeowner in the neighborhood during construction of the project. We'll talk high level on some funding components as it relates to project costs. Again, as you are all parcel owners within the neighborhood. And then we'll kind of conclude, and at the end we'll have time for some question and answer. So we'll roll through the slides here. Please write down your questions as we discuss things. And we'll hopefully get to all those at the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brandon to talk a little bit more in detail on the project, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so some of you all may have some familiarity with the project. In the early stages of this, a couple of years ago, we conducted a neighborhood survey in November of 2022. So the intent of that survey was to see what you thought of the existing conditions, the streets and the utilities, and to get an understanding of the project was necessary. So the intent of that was to more so establish a baseline of how you felt and if you'd like the project. There was no proposed project or project costs included in that. So of the 73 properties within Westwood, we received 21 responses. And just the stats from those responses are 70% felt that the infrastructure improvements are necessary. 43% said that drainage or standing water has directly impacted them. And 71% stated that street condition and street drainage are in bad to fair condition. So a little background on the history of Westwood. It was installed in 1959, so now it's 65 years old today. There's no record of any rehabilitation projects since it was originally installed. The utilities in the neighborhood are beyond their design life and need a replacement. The lighting is on existing wooden poles, and it's only at the intersection, so it's below the current city standards as far as spacing and potentially a safety concern. The roadways are deteriorated and failing in many areas, and the Westwood project is included in the city's core area improvement plan as its top priority project. So next, getting into the utilities of Westwood, we'll start with the roadway. So the existing roadway is a asphalt urban section with curb and gutter. So I'm sure you've noticed the streets out there, there's many issues, settlement, drainage issues, heavy cracking. So one thing to consider with why the road is in poor condition is, number one, the age. So typically what you'd expect with an asphalt, like if we're just looking at the asphalt, a brand new asphalt street would be expected to last 25 to 30 years if a maintenance program is not introduced to it. So that would include the seal coating, known overlays. The Westwood asphalt has never been rehabilitated throughout its life, and it's 65 years old now. And you also see out in the neighborhood a lot of drainage issues. So with that, when water's sitting on pavement, that soaks into the pavement and damages the asphalt. Also through the freeze-thaw cycle, that water gets in cracks, expands the cracks, and makes them worse. And I'll get further into the drainage issues when we discuss the storm sewer as well. But on the photos here, you can see there's some ponding and some settlement issues, so that water is just sitting there and soaking and ruining the street. We also have on the other side here, sorry, it's getting covered up a little bit, but heavy cracking, called block cracking. And when it gets closer and closer together, we call it alligator cracking. It looks like an alligator's back. Next we have, okay, so next we have sanitary sewer. The existing pipes in the neighborhood are made of vitrified clay pipe, or VCP. So that pipe is reaching the end of its design life of 50 to 60 years. And we're starting to see areas with significant structural concerns in the pipe. So just going through the photos on the slides here, from the left to the right. On the left-hand side here, you see some heavy fracturing. And what will happen in the future is some of these pieces will want to fall in the pipe and allow the earth to start working into the pipe. And this next photo here, we have a root ball. So typically with VCP, especially as it gets older, the joints aren't sealed as well, and the roots want to get into the pipe, especially with the new cracks that are happening in the pipe. So we see root balls, also groundwater infiltrate coming into those cracks. And then the last image there, another fractured pipe section. That one is kind of switching on the sides and showing signs of a future collapse. And then it's fine.
These are camera shots from our area.
Yes, correct. Yeah, this is the televisor from your neighborhood. So one concern with all these issues is eventually potential collapses or just blockages could lead to backups in sewer services and basements. Next item, the water distribution system. So that's made of asbestos cement pipe, or ACP. That's 50 to 60, the design life on that is 50 to 60 years as well. One thing to consider with ACP, as it gets closer to the point where it wants to fail, what will happen is the water main pressure will break the pipe, and that'll leak up to the surface and damage the road. When that happens, the city needs to come in and do emergency repairs, and those can be expensive. And once that starts to happen, you can expect that pipe to potentially continue on with breaks. So once you start to get towards the end of the design life and these breaks are in the foreseeable future, it's more cost effective to do a replacement project rather than incur those emergency expensive costs. Because regardless, you have to replace the pipe. It's good to just avoid those costs that had to happen before you replace the whole thing. Another component with the ACP is the metal components. So you have your fire hydrants, your gate valves, curb stops. Over time, those are corroding and rusting, and they can begin to lock up and not work any longer. And the last item for the water distribution is the fire hydrants. So in a properly designed neighborhood, fire hydrants should be spread out to provide proper fire hydrant coverage and protection for your homes. Westwood is lacking fire hydrants in a few areas. So there's a couple spots where we need to add fire hydrants. Next item, storm sewer. So looking at the bigger map on the right-hand side of the slide, shows the whole Westwood development. Currently, the whole neighborhood, or approximately like the 90% of it from the north end drains all the way down to the south end, where the only storm sewer inlets exist at the south end. And here's a zoomed in image of those. There's 5 storm sewer inlets. So on a brand new development, we would design it to have storm sewer inlets spread throughout the streets to provide proper drainage areas for each inlet. So currently, Westwood is a large drainage area for what the storm sewer provides. It's also quite flat. So as you can see, the water isn't always getting to the south end. It's ponding the streets or just soaking into the ground. So with that, with the drainage areas, the drainage issues, that's damaging the streets, and you might see potential flooding in heavy rain events or during the springtime. Okay, so as we zoom out from Westwood and start thinking about what the city is trying to prioritize for projects in its core area, and look at their capital improvement plan, you can use this map here, and the map it's showing the rating of combining the utilities and the roadways. It's kind of a heat map of the worst in red and the best in green. So looking at this map, Westwood as an isolated neighborhood, not being connected to other regional projects, is in the worst case in the core area. So it's the city's top priority in the core area capital improvement plan. Okay, so recommendations for the project. Number 1, replace the sanitary sewer and the water mains, also the sewer and water services up to your property lines. Next, install a new storm sewer system that extends up through the roads and provides proper inlets. Then with the combination of those utility replacements and the core roadway that exists, we'll plan to reconstruct the full roadway, including reconstructing all the sidewalks. And with the sidewalks, there's a consideration for the American Disability Act for handicap accessibility to provide proper roads on the sidewalks. And then finally, we'll install new street lighting that meets current city standards. Okay, so this exhibit map here shows all the proposed improvements that we're recommending. So Westwood is turned sideways here on the right-hand side of the slide is the north end. Showing we're replacing the sewer and the water, on the sidewalks, the driveways, the asphalt street. We're extending new storm sewer, and we're tying the storm sewer down into Elmwood Park into an existing storm system to eventually drain the river.
Everything is going back in as is. Sidewalk widths and.
No, we're changing that up a
All
bit.
gonna
Yeah,
change
I'll get into that.
A 4-foot wide sidewalk.
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah, I'll get into the layout in a few slides here. Yeah, we're gonna go next. Okay, so now considering the construction activity and impacts. So this slide has a lot of hot topics that we'll need to discuss at the end of the slideshow, when we get into questions and feedback from you all. But so number one, the existing right of way is narrower than a standard right of way. So it's 50 feet compared to 62 feet wide. So that makes it for difficult construction for tighter space. Another consideration that we're looking into in the design process to make sure we coordinate this properly, but it's project phasing. So we don't want the whole neighborhood ripped up all at once because it kind of, Westwood is kind of like a dead end the way it's shaped. So the idea on this example project phasing image is one color would be reconstructed at a time to maintain access to the other colors. So other things to consider during construction. So when we're replacing all the utilities in the road, number one, we'll have temporary water service. So temporary water lines will lie in your yards to continue water service to your homes. We'll have to consider the contractor will have to coordinate moving your garbage out and getting rid of that during garbage day. Mail, we'll have to coordinate with the post office to make sure that mail is still getting to you, whether they continue to deliver to your home or there's a temporary mailbox set up that you have to walk or drive to. And then the biggest thing to discuss, last one I forgot there, emergency services. We want to try to minimize the scope of what's being shut down in order to make sure there's still access to your homes. So the biggest conversation with this is it's going to be very inconvenient to the residents that are living in front of the areas that are getting fully reconstructed. So it's going to be inconvenient to access. Some of you will have to park a block or more away from your homes during that time, and it'll be a difficult process. So we'll discuss more of that at the end of the slideshow. I'm sure you all have concerns with the access. So next, getting into the temporary construction easements. So you've gotten the letters in the mail. Dan mentioned it. That's an important item for this project due to the narrow right of way and the fact that we're replacing so much. So the temporary construction easement will help with grading the new road into your yard to make that a smoother transition. We also are going to be replacing the sewer and water services up to the property line. So the trench will, when they dig that trench, they'll need a little more space than just right up to your property line.
I just had a question about the access. You know, I'm in the middle of the block, so when my street gets done, what about parking on, you know, wherever we can park? Because right now there's restrictions on parking. You know, one side of the street or the other. So if you block off the whole street, can be a lot of people that don't need access.
What I'll say from that perspective is we'll work with law enforcement for the parking restrictions with that we're not going to be looking to ticket people that are, you know, parking in a non-parking area during construction. So we will be working with law enforcement to ease restrictions for parking because it is going to be inconvenient.
So that includes 7th Avenue also?
I would imagine if we're still in the beginning of this, but if there is parking, say you're in the blue area near 7th Avenue, park up on 7th Avenue, that would be another consideration that we would work with law enforcement.
You can just stay there the 2 weeks or 5 weeks it takes to do the blue section, they can just park on 7th, so they're just gonna walk up to there, get their car.
Our goal is to find solutions that get you to be able to park as close to your house as possible, and that's why they're talking of phase. Now, they're showing it in 4 different phases on this. It might not end up being 4 phases, it might be 3 phases, it might be 2 phases. Right now, we're looking at a 4-phase thing, but once we get into design and we really can put pen to paper, this might change, but our goal, and with a lot of other projects, we've got side streets that people can just park on. We don't have that luxury with this neighborhood, so we are gonna have to take into consideration
How
things.
long for each phase?
I don't know the answer to that question tonight. I'm sorry.
Anybody consider doing temporary access to 13th Avenue out of that park blocked off last year? So we utilize the park for parking?
Yeah, can you open up the north gate at Elmwood Park?
That's another consideration we'd have to look at during design, but.
The red section represents at least 40% of the entire project. Why is that one single unit rather than broken up into 2?
Yeah, so the southern section here is affecting the park and a single parcel. So that's why it's appearing a little bit larger than all the other sections. But like Dan mentioned, we're still working through the phasing and the best
I
ability.
think that southern leg to the park, and it is still the largest single section by a great deal.
Yep, and it still might end up being like that once we, go through the design process. And post bid, and when a contractor is identified, we fully intend to work with that contractor to kind of identify some of that phasing as well. And the best way to get people in and out of their homes, they're going to be integral to this process during the construction as well.
So you're like the politician who has a concept of a plan.
Right now, this is a concept of a plan. More details will be ironed out as we move forward with the
And
project.
I'm just gonna add, if it's a concept of a plan, it shows on special assessments at $2,400,000. If we don't know what that bottom figure is gonna be, you're gonna come back to us in March when we start this project and then tell us, oh, by the way, it's $3.5 million. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the information that we have, we'll get to that in a little bit in the presentation, but the information that we have right now is based off of a feasibility study and an engineer's report. We fully intend to have this meeting again after the project has been bid and we have a contractor under contract where we will get back together. The numbers that you see in the engineer's report, we hope that they're conservative. That's one of the things that he was just getting into as far as the right-of-way with the right-of-way being only 50 feet wide, it's very tight for a contractor to work within that space. That's why it's critical for us to be able to get some of these temporary construction easements to give the contractor more room to work. If they're just constricted to only that 50 feet, they're going to be slower and it's going to be harder to build, and therefore they'll probably bid it at a higher price. Really, in the end, the contractor is going to tell us what the true price of the project is with the bid. Right now, we can only go off of what we have for a feasibility study and estimates.
And if the contractor comes in too high, then do we have, as a citizens, do we have the ability to say, we don't want to spend that money because you're going to basically assess us out of our homes?
So after the project's been bid and we have those numbers, then we will go back to the commission and we'll bring that forth to the commission for their consideration as to whether to accept the bids or reject the bids and figure out alternate solutions at that point.
And to add on to what Dan was saying, in a few slides, we'll kind of step through some of that funding like you're talking about, and then some other items that the city's looking to help fund additional improvements.
I don't mean to slow down the meeting.
No,
But
no.
then you're also going on to making us have a 4-foot sidewalk. Is that part of the 62 feet or is that an additional to the street project?
It's not additional right-of-way being requested. The right-of-way width will stay at 50 feet, but the sidewalk will be the city standard 4-foot walk in this area.
Yeah.
And
And that will be part of upgrading us to 62 feet, so that's the widest that project is going to be. Or is it gonna be 62 feet plus 4 feet for the sidewalk?
It will
It's
not,
gonna stay 50 feet.
it will stay
It's
50.
not gonna widen out and the sidewalk will be inside the 50 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
compared to like a new development that has the 62 feet,
Mhm.
the difference you'll see is the grass between the sidewalk and the back of the curb gutter is just less space, just because the space isn't available.
Yeah, and that's a great question to be able to provide a point of clarification. The temporary construction easements that we're requesting is not the city trying to purchase or gain any more right of way. At the end of the project, after the project is completely done, all of those temporary construction easements that we're asking for, those sunset and they go away, and you'll still own the same amount of yard that you do 3 years from now as you do today. What that does is it just says, you're giving us availability to work in your yard so we can give the contractor more room during construction. And then after construction's done, they have to go back, reseed everything, and get everything established again. And then the project's done, the contractor's gone. The temporary construction easement never gets recorded. It's just saved in a file that we have your permission to work on the project in your yards. And then there's a date that will expire, and we will no longer have that easement on your yard anymore.
Sometimes you got like trees or fences that are in the easement line, temporary easement line. I mean, in this thing, the way it's written, you're saying that I'm responsible to tear the fences down, put them all back together as the grantor.
Also, that you will not be responsible to take the fence down. I'll reword the letter if that's what it's saying.
That's what it sounds like.
What about putting it back up though?
Yep. Everything we disturb, we will replace and put it back together.
Do we wait and sign these until that's all redone?
We can cross it off and initial it tonight if you'd like. That's
Just to
fine.
make sure, that was like,
Yeah.
that was the only part I seen, I think, like the grantee and the grantor got flopped.
Yep, I apologize.
I lose 3 trees on your plan.
So one thing with this, from the designing standpoint, we want to hear about unique issues. There will potentially be consequences if you choose between keeping a tree or removing it. It's just that decision process. It just depends on how the road will slope into your yard. And we can work together to decide how you'd like to do that.
Because we're on 544, which is on 8th Avenue, which is the curb. If you see where the curb comes around, right, that's our house right there that faces out. We have 3 trees in the front yard that, according to your plan, I will lose them. And those trees have been planted there for 20-some years.
So that's not necessarily true. If we have cases like that, we need to talk about it together and decide. We'll look at our design and see what we need to do for grading.
Just for my property or for everybody else's property?
Yeah, I need to hear from everybody if there's concerns with that.
Okay.
But if I go to you and I say, you might end up with a sloped yard like this, right by that tree, we'll have to work together for you to decide if that's something that you'd like or
And
not.
I hate to jump ahead, but we're also going to talk about drainage from the back side. If everything comes from the north, which you all know, every backyard on 8th or in Elm Street is full of water, and that dumps right in to my backyard. Now I have a pump system back there to pump it out into the sewer system. Are we gonna do anything about that drainage going back in the back of the houses to make that water flow, or are we just gonna do the front streets? Are you gonna fix the drainage problem?
And
Or are you just gonna make it go away faster?
that's exactly why we're here tonight.
Okay.
To hear things like that. So if I could call just a timeout, we have a question and answer session at the end. And we fully expect all these questions to go through, but if we could, we're gonna jump back in.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I don't blame you one bit. I'd be here too
Yes,
asking
questions.
questions.
The boulevard is about 1.5 feet now. If you make the sidewalk 4 feet wide, there will be 6 feet.
You're gonna wind up with like this, of grass, the wall.
Yeah, and we'll get into, he's gonna show a design section of what we're looking to do with the roadway in the presentation. So
So you're not going to make our roads wider?
the road is not getting wider. The road is actually slimming up just a hair.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
It's not what it sounds like in this letter.
Yeah,
So there's confusion there.
We'll have to,
okay, okay, we'll be quiet and let you.
I'll jump into that. I'll wrap up. here.
Okay.
So I finished off with the sewer and water service replacements up to the property line, so we'll need room to dig those trenches. Another consideration on this project is if you have any known issues with your private services that go to your homes, or if you'd like to potentially hire a plumber and televise your private service to see if you'd like to replace it, we're looking at the option to incorporate those onto this project. We'd like to set a deadline to the end of January for you to tell us if you'd like that to be on this project. So with the benefit from that is with a contractor there, you're likely going to be saving costs versus hiring someone to do individual services, an individual contractor, someone's already there doing the work. And also, there will be an option if you'd like to directly assess those costs on your special assessments.
Or pay for them privately.
Or, yeah, you can pay for it privately.
Would that type of work include like your driveway?
So that driveways are going to be, a portion of driveways will be replaced on this project. It does depend where your sewer service lies in your yard. So that'll be something we'll consider. We'll also have to consider landscaping, and we'd like to avoid your foundation as part of this project as well.
If we don't know that we need to replace sewer water, we'll be told at that time. And then have to try to figure out grit and try to figure out whether we want to do it or.
So what I guess the most efficient way to handle this right now is that you tell us and we can incorporate it on the project before we bid it. There is a chance during construction, if the contractor finds something, that we could bring up to you if we see an issue. That's just, the only issue there is the contractor does not always have to agree to do additional work on the project. So that just makes it less efficient to do it like the day you find it.
How do we know, like, if something's messed up?
Right now, in order to incorporate it, you would have to hire someone to televise your service.
I'm gonna say, what about contractors gonna send a letter out to them? That's the way I see it. They're gonna send a letter out saying, hey,
If they see
we're
it,
coming through the area, anybody that wants to re-sleeve it, we're here. Dump and re-sleeve it. I've seen that too.
yes, yeah.
So they'll come in also on that.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we kind of already got into this discussion, but considering the street typical section, so that's if you're looking across the road and come a line down the side, and as if you're cutting like a piece of cake, you can see the side view, the layers of it. We're going to be going to the city's standard residential street section. So I'll get into further detail of what those components are on the next slide. But this image here is kind of a little more detailed than what we'll use during the design and the construction plans. But one thing to consider is you discussed your street width and your space of your boulevards. The city standard is actually narrower than what is existing today in Westwood. So if you go to a new development in West Fargo, the street sections are actually narrower by 1 foot on each side. So I'll get into that on the next slide here. So a couple of components to consider. Currently the Westwood Street has up on the left-hand top side of the screen is a 6-inch high back curving gutter. And the way that functions is that goes down the street, and then every driveway, it goes down flat for you to drive over. The city's standard for new developments is the mountable curving gutter, which is shorter, and that can be uniformly paved through the development, and your driveways tie into that. The change with that there is it's kind of a ramp shape, so it's a little more of a bump to drive onto. There is a benefit on this project for helping grading and tying your yards with the constraints we have. And it also helps flatten the driveway a little bit by raising that to the back of the curb. So next to the street cross section, I already I guess in this middle, the middle diagram is the street cross section. The existing section is in the gray line. So as I discussed, we're gonna go narrower by 1 foot on each side. We're switching to the mountable curb and gutter, so it's a shorter curve. And then the discussion now is how do we incorporate storm sewer and grading the road? So if we look at the bottom diagram, that shows the street profile, so that's like if you're looking down the road, and you're driving down the road, the existing gray line is how Westwood is now. That's a flatter slope than what we would design a new street to. So we need to incorporate new low points and high points for all of your, to add multiple drainage areas throughout the streets. And those low points provide the location for the new storm sewer inlet. So the cross section and the profile correspond to each other, where we're going up in blue and down in the green color. So the biggest thing to consider with this is the temporary construction easements. When we're changing the elevation of the road, if we're going up, we have flatter slopes tying into your front yards. And when we're going down, we have steeper slopes coming into your yards. So the more space we have to work with that, the more uniform the slopes can be, and the more, I guess, they can be the slopes that we prefer to have, rather than too steep or too flat. We also don't want to block. So that's all I have. I'll let Matt get into the funding portion.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So as you can tell from Brandon's existing conditions discussion, all the infrastructure in the neighborhood is kind of past its intended design life. The proposed improvements and recommendations, and then adding some modern storm sewer, revised street drainage, and street lighting would be a huge benefit to the neighborhood. Identifying the issues and kind of the fixes to those issues, that's kind of the easy topic, if you will. The two topics that we started to discuss already, construction impacts, and then the second, funding of the overall project. Those are kind of what we're here to mainly discuss tonight. That's what I'm going to get into a little bit further in detail. So Brandon brought up the project as a priority project within the city's capital improvement plan, specifically the core area capital improvement plan. And the 2024 CIP was approved on August 5th, 2024 by the City Commission. And within this capital improvement plan, it takes a look at a 5-year window of projects all across the city. These are all ranked on a multitude of factors and priorities, and Westwood was identified as one of those priority projects for this coming year. Also within this recently adopted 2024 CIP, or capital improvement plan, was a set of project funding guidelines, and each project within the 5-year CIP window was assigned one of these project funding guidelines based on its project type. So what that means for Westwood, it's classified as a local reconstruct project, and per the CIP, it's to be funded 70% by city local funds, and then proposed 30% via special assessments. So this is a difference from the 2022 CIP, where a local reconstruct project was actually funded 40% by local funds and 60% by special assessments. So you can see that there has been a difference in the city's contribution for a local reconstruction project. So digging into the numbers a little bit further, what this means more specifically on Westwood, with a proposed 30% special assessment, the city has taken the initial steps of the project process required for a special assessed project or a portion. And the first step that was taken was a improvement district was created. So this here on the screen shows the improvement district map that was approved by the City Commission back in September of 2024. You can see that the map and boundary encompasses all of Westwood, including the West Fargo Park District parcel, the North Elmwood Park to the south as well. The next step in the special assessment project process, Dan alluded to this at the beginning of the meeting, is that engineer's report is prepared, and part of this engineer's report is the preparation of a cost estimate or opinion of cost. So right now, with the feasibility study and the engineer's report, again, that was adopted by the city commission this fall. The current estimated cost is around $8 million for the improvements that Brandon laid out a little bit earlier. This cost total, like Dan also stated, right now is preliminary. It doesn't include all the construction costs related to the infrastructure that Brandon discussed, all city administrative costs, engineering costs related to design fees and the like. And then it also has a 20% contingency on top of that. This 20% contingency is meant to be conservative in our estimate, like Dan was alluding to, for unforeseen things that we find during the design process or during construction even. So with the 2024 CIP in mind and the 70-30 split, and then the total estimated cost currently around that $8 million mark, that means a little bit more if we break it down further, as we kind of alluded to earlier. The current assessed total, that 30% mark of the 8 million, is around that $2.41 million mark. This means that the average assessment on the parcels in this neighborhood range from around $26,000 to $44,000. That's about an average assessment around $33,000. So if you look a little bit further, just estimating an interest rate over a period of time of 25 years, that is around a $2,300 annual installment for an average assessment. So knowing that the project cost is a large component of this whole topic, but also recognizing that the infrastructure is in needing of replacement and efficient, the city is maintaining that this is a priority project. So with that, they have also applied for other funding sources to help supplement the special assessments and the local city share. One of these options that they're pursuing is state water commission funding, which would help fund the water main portion of this project, and upwards of $1.2 million. And so what this means for the project, if you kind of follow the same methodology of splitting the 70-30 split, if the city is able to secure the full grant funding from the State Water Commission, that does reduce the assessment range down to around $23,000 to $37,000, and it brings that average assessment down as well to around the $27,000, $28,000 mark. And then again, we included the bottom line as an estimated annual installment over a 25-year period. So this is an example of additional funding that the city's going out and trying to secure. In addition to this, the city is also looking at potentially utilizing some low interest state loans as a potential benefit to the project. So with that, I will pass over to Dan right now. He's going to discuss where we are in terms of the project process and how it relates to those costs and special assessments.
All right, up on the screen right now, you'll see a flow chart, and this is how the process for contracts and improvements, how does a project go through the city? It starts off just starting the project, and then it's added to the capital improvement plan. That was done with the 2024 CIP, and it was also included in the 2022 CIP, as well as the core area study that was completed in 2019, followed by the additional core area improvement study that was completed recently this year in the spring. We moved from there to preliminary design and studies. That has been done. And then we, on every project, we determine, is this an accessible project or is this a city, 100% city funded project? In this case, it is an assessment project. So then with that, we created the improvement district and we created an engineer's report with the estimate of probable cost, and that's where the costs that you saw on the previous slides came from. Excuse me. And then from that point, the city has directed the engineer to prepare plans and specifications for the project. So the red arrow is the "you are here" mark. That shows where we are in this process right now. The next step is for the engineer to finish the design of the project. And then the next step that the city commission will address would be to approve the engineer's plans and specifications and authorize an advertisement for bids. I believe March 3rd is what 13th is what we're estimating for that date. And then that's when we'll open up the bids and we'll find out. And like I said before, the contractor is going to tell us what the true cost of the project is, because they're going to put their name on the bottom line saying, I'll build it for that. So after we get those bids in, we take it back and we run all the numbers again, and we present that to the city commission. And we give the city commission the results of the bid, and the city commission at that point in time can choose to either award the contract to the contractor or reject all bids. Those are basically the two options that the city commission is going to have at that time. It's also at that time that we plan on sending out more letters and having another meeting just like this, where we can come back and report back to you with some more defined information, for example, on the phasing of the project, where we landed on what the phases end up looking like. We'll have more answers as far as how construction's going to look, timelines, things of that nature. But more importantly for all of you, what did the bids come back at, and what did that do to the proposed assessments? So we'll be coming back at that time to present that information to you in, again, another neighborhood public informational meeting such as we have here. At that point in time, I produce an engineer statement of cost. The city commission says whether either awards the bid or rejects all bids. And then we move forward with getting contracts, getting the project constructed. And then after the project is constructed, we tally all the costs that went into the project, whether it's construction, design, material testing, legal, admin, all the different things that go into the project costs. And those project costs are then finalized. And at that point in time, we start the actual assessment process. There is a special assessment commission that the city of West Fargo has. We will be bringing so let me just back up. We're intending that this project is going to be constructed in 25. So we would actually not certify the special assessments until the fall of 26. And so the special assessment commission hearing that we would have would be in the fall of 2026. And that would also be after having that meeting, we present to the special assessment commission. This is where we landed with the cost of the project. This is the means, the methods, the techniques that we determined to how we were going to calculate the special assessments. We get their feedback on that, and that assessment process does have its own hearing, where you'll all receive another letter from that process to show up, and it'll say specifically for your parcel, here's what the estimated, or not the estimated, here's what the assessment will be on your parcel. And you'll have the opportunity to show up at that special assessment commission meeting and voice your concerns with either the cost of the project, the means, methods, or things of that nature. They're going to make a recommendation that we would take eventually to the city commission following that meeting. And that's when the city commission would basically certify the special assessments. We get that number to the county in the fall of 26, and we would do that before the property tax statements are sent out. And the first time that you would see a payment that would be due, that would be incorporated into your tax statement shown as special assessments, would be in your 2027 taxes. So 3 years from now, but basically 2 years from now before we certify, and it would be 2027 before you'll see any financial impacts on your tax statements from that. So I know there was a lot of questions that were received as far as what can we talk about the special assessment tonight. We want to be wide open as far as here's what our estimates are, but we wanted to just emphasize that it's at that special assessment commission meeting is where your opportunity is to show up and discuss your assessments to that board at that meeting. And then after the city certifies the assessments, again, then we take those, we record them with the county, and then it's turned over to the county to include in the tax records from that point. So wanted to just give this diagram on the process of how a project moves through that through that funding mechanism.
Your property taxes go up on the value of your sidewalk?
This shouldn't have much, if any, effect on the actual property taxes, your valuation, right? It's, in essence, one of the ways that I've heard it discussed before, it's property valuation protection, because if the sewer mains are collapsing, the water mains are breaking, and your streets are falling apart, that decreases the value of the property. But what we're talking about here is basically recreating an entirely new neighborhood with all new PVC pipe everywhere. The PVC has a 100-year design life, so none of us should ever have to worry about any of the utilities that we're putting in the ground. And then moving on from there. Now the streets, again, there are maintenance things that happen over time, milling and overlaying and seal coats and things like that we do to prolong the life cycle of the roadway. Those would be things that would come in likely generally 15 to 20 years after this project is constructed is when a mill and overlay would happen. The other thing that I'd like to mention.
What's the plan for the electricity and the gas lines?
We actually have a meeting this week with all of the utility
Well,
companies.
what's your plans?
My plans?
Yeah.
We don't own or operate Excel's lines. We don't own or operate anything.
I realize that, but
Those
what do you think they're gonna do?
But our plan is to coordinate with them and give them an opportunity to be part of the project. We want to hear from them. The utility companies, they make the decision what they want to do with their utilities in conjunction with this project. So let's say that whoever's providing the gas service to the project, they might want to work with our contractor to put some conduit underneath the roadways to be able to replace old systems. I know there's some overhead power. There might be an opportunity if the power company wants to, they would have an opportunity to join into this construction process to bury it. But the city does not make that call. That is up to the utility to make that call. But
That's all at their cost.
that would all be at their cost.
Their cost.
That's not included in the cost of our projects. Correct.
You
Yep.
definitely think they'd want to bury the following. Come on, let's make it.
We've heard that they want to, whether they do or not, we need to find that out. We have not met with the utility companies yet. We've just alerted them to the project, and there is a meeting. It's Thursday this week. We have a engineer and dry utility meeting that's gonna happen where
They
we're
look
gonna.
really dumb when you got all brand new poles, new rolls there, and you got these big wooden poles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell them they're in the easement, they gotta remove.
Right. We just need to make sure they put them back if they were.
How much does the park district pay for this?
So
I was gonna say, they had made the opening there like 2 years ago.
yeah. So like Dan alluded to, special assessments are all preliminary at this time, but.
This is DWR.
What's that? Okay, let's just assume no cost for right now, so.
Yep.
Right now, their assessments are estimated at $55,000 on the sheet.
Not enough.
No,
They've done so much damage in that neighborhood rebuilding that park, they should have to pay to put it back together.
they're half traffic on, half the traffic.
That's what I was gonna say too. There's so much traffic going down Elm Street.
100%.
I mean, that's the only entrance into Elmwood Park.
Yeah, after they.
So you're putting everybody's children in, yeah.
That curb and gutter out front of my place. 7-axle trailer, 4-axle semi, no invisible load, put everything on one load and trash all the roads.
Yeah, what I could say as far as the parks assessment, the way that we calculated the assessments was on a methodology of this many lineal feet of street, this many, there was no judgment where it's like, well, let's just make them pay more. There wasn't an arbitrary movement of any assessments. The assessments that are calculated on the sheet are based off of the formulas for the project, so that way they're being assessed equity.
Their foot.
For their footage and things like that.
Not for damage.
Not for damage, but what I would say is that the way that the streets are going to be designed, they're gonna be designed to handle the passenger traffic that's gonna be coming in and out of
Well, I
the
know what the
parks.
traffic is for, their parking.
Yeah.
I would say if they're gonna kick their curb out, shut the entrance on,
Right.
block it off.
That's
So-
that
Move
13.
back to the other side. Move back to the other side. I'm coming in from the
Yeah.
south side.
It's safer coming in from 13th Avenue or just coming down Elm Street.
So one thing, I by no means work for the park district. I'm just kind of offering an opinion from other input meetings that I've attended on that Elmwood project specifically. I do know some of the intent or methodology that the park district used, eliminating that connection to 13th Avenue. There's a few things. One, that roadway is very close to the river, so just logistically, that roadway was kind of sloughing into the river, one. And then two, that North Elmwood parcel or park area is kind of intended to hold kind of that local park for your neighborhood and directly around you feel. Everything south of that near 13th Avenue and South Elmwood is kind of intended to be that regional park field. And so it is supposed to be Westwood's park. And so it's,
Well, just have a walk access.
Right.
Right, like it used to be.
Yep, some road access.
and
The only way to access Armor Park is by driving through a residential neighborhood to get to that park as well. It's not uncommon to have a park at the end of a neighborhood.
But you're doing, next year, you're doing Armor Park.
I'm sorry?
You're doing Armor Park next year, aren't you? In 2026? I mean, that's what I saw on the
So
website.
the park district and the city are actually two completely separate entities. So the city is not doing an Elmwood Park. Is that what you're talking
I'm
about?
talking about Armor Park.
Armor Park.
Like by
Um,
Riverside.
They're talking about redoing Armor Park.
So
Making
that,
it larger.
that would be the park district doing those improvements. That wouldn't be the city. So that's a common thing that's believed, is that the park district is an arm of the city, where we do a lot of coordination with them, but they have their own commission. They've got their own taxing authority, and they are truly a separate entity.
So why then is the drain from Westwood going into the park?
There is a regional lift station, storm sewer lift station, that takes water from many different areas into that lift station, and it goes out into the river from that point. So it's not uncommon to use park areas for storm sewer lift stations and things of that nature.
So
So
there will be a new lift station there.
that is a fairly new lift station.
Yeah, that's one we're already paying for.
That's the one that's already in place, yeah.
Yeah, we're already paying our special side.
Yep, and all of the new storm sewer that's gonna be created in the Westwood neighborhood is all going to funnel into that force main that goes out to the river from that new storm lift station.
What's the park
wouldn't that be
district kicking in to pay for this?
I'm sorry?
What's the park district kicking in to pay for this?
Well, so none of the drainage areas that were created is water that is coming from the park. All the areas that we're draining, it's only talking about coming from this. If, let's just say that we were installing inlets out into the park area, then absolutely they would pay for part of that, for their portion of it.
We're using the pump station in the park, and then so now we're paying for all this, we're gonna take it down to the park. If the facility was somewhere else, they ran up and down Elm Street for 3 years, redoing what's in the park now. So they're partly responsible for the reason the roads are broken down and everything else. So where's their,
What I can say is, in the 2019 core area study, this project was identified as a high priority project in that 2019 study. So 5 years ago, this project was identified. In fact, we had actually talked about constructing this project in 23, but at the time, if you're, as one of the slides showed, the city had a policy where we assessed, the city only contributed 40% and assessed 60% of the project cost. When we ran the feasibility study for that project, the assessments ranged anywhere between $40,000 to $80,000. And we had a workshop with the commission, and I got a very hard, that is not gonna fly. We need to pay more and do less projects to lower the assessments on these projects. So that's where we came back with the 2024 CIP, and we adjusted the amount of city contribution from that 40% up to the 70%. And in essence, cut the percentage that we were assessing in half. So that's why the average assessment without getting any grant money is about that $32,000 that's been presented here tonight. That was actually upwards of 40,000, over 40,000 a couple of years ago. So
Show us information on one grant. Have you gone after any other grants to help us neighborhood out?
There is no other grants that we've
Yes,
been able.
there is. There's one grants out there for small neighborhoods.
I'd love to have a conversation and learn.
Sure.
If you've got some grants, we'll definitely go for them. What I can say is, the one grant that we did go, the State Water Commission to help pay for the water main, that was one that we were aware of. And then there was also, the low interest loan money that we're looking at getting, we've applied for, and we are on the clean water and drinking water intended use plans, and those are 2% loans. So where I showed a calculation on that slide of a annual cost at an estimated 5%, that 5% was just the number that I picked for this presentation. If we get a 2% loan, it would actually be less than that 5%. But again, we're trying to be conservative with the numbers tonight, because like somebody mentioned earlier, we don't want to come back and say it got more expensive if we can help it. The only way that this is getting more expensive is if the contractor comes back with a bid price that's not expected. But yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with you afterwards. And if there's other avenues that we're not aware of, we can
We
definitely.
have a limit of percentage of overs, of where it's not gonna go. If you're at 8 million, they're coming back at 9.5.
That's where we basically take it into account, and the commission at that point in time,
There isn't a set percentage.
there is no set percentage. It's all up to the commission. Now, there is with a specially assessed project, 40% is what the legal limit is that you can't go over. But if we go 40% over this number, we're likely rejecting all bids and trying to figure something else out.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is, let's say that they come in 20% over what we estimated. Well, we do have 20% contingencies in these numbers, so we're hoping we cover that. But what I will share is that we have had conversations. We've reached out to local contractors, people that do work in the city, and this is not an attractive project for them. They said they can bid a project where they're in an open field, just swinging buckets and throwing dirt, or they can be constrained to a 50-foot right of way where they have to slowly march down the street, deal with getting people in and out of their homes, the garbage, carrying groceries, that type of thing. This isn't, it's not a gold star project for a contractor. However, it is a sizable project. If you take a look, it's an $8 million project in the metro area where they don't have to send their people to an hour away, so they do tend to want to work it down. So we're hoping that we get bids. We are going to take a look at seeing if there's any advertising we can do outside of the metro, potentially that we can get some. I've worked in the past with a number of contractors into Minnesota for a ways that I have contacts with, that I'm going to make sure that they're aware of this project. Whether they bid it or not, I don't know, but it won't be as a result of us not reaching out and trying to get a wider berth of knowledge of contractors that know about the project. And I'm not going to lie, this is the first reconstruct of a neighborhood within the core area that we're moving forward with. That 2024 CIP that he mentioned, that is littered with more of these coming with other neighborhoods. Luck of the draw, this is the first one that was identified based off of, you could see the condition of the sanitary and things like that. This was really driven by the utilities, and secondary is the failing streets, because we've got worse streets in town than we have in your neighborhood. There's no doubt about that. But what we really focused on is, where are the pipes looking like they're potentially going to collapse first? That had a greater weighting on the algorithm that weighted the projects in that study. That's how this one rose to the top, is because the pipes in the neighborhood are really deteriorating. And then if I could back up just on a question on how do we know if our service pipe is good or bad? Brandon mentioned, well, if the contractor's out there and we see something, we're absolutely going to notify you about that. But what we can say is, generally speaking, the age of your service is the same age as those pipes that we showed you that were in the street. And they're probably also clay tile pipes that are going up to your house. So it's not uncommon that the services follow with that. Now, a smaller pipe can handle a lot more loading, so sometimes you see the services have fared a little bit better, but that's just a guess. We haven't went in and televised all the services. And so what Brandon mentioned earlier is one of the things that we're looking at doing. If you could let us know by the end of January, And we will take into account trees, things like that. You might want to just look at a reline or something like that if it means we're going to lose an oak tree or something like that. But if we have some wide open space that you'd like us to go up into your yard as close as we can get, not getting into the flower garden in front of your house or up to the foundation of your house, but if we can go as far as the contractor feels comfortable going into your yard, if we have that a temporary construction easement for utilities, which is not the easement you have in your hands, we'll follow up with a different easement for that work. We'd be willing to go as far up into the yard as possible. The other
So
thing,
that they look right in our windows when they get out of their cars.
I'm sorry?
So people will be parking on the street and looking right into my picture window.
No.
No. I saw the guys out there. There was two guys out there the other day measuring the distance to the street and everything. Every measurement they took, they were between my house and my trees. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
This is my house, these are my trees, they were right here, and then doing their measurements out to the street.
Yep, and so that was some of the additional topographic survey that we were collecting.
Okay.
Brandon was alluding to figure out that best up and down
grade?
grade of the road. And so, not saying that we will directly go that far, and we can work on those case by case basis, or examples, but in order to determine that, we need to not only get in front of those trees, but also behind it,
Right.
so we know the proper elevation to be at.
So with the elevation, means everything moves to the south as far as water goes. Is the street gonna be higher or lower than our existing properties?
So I won't say that the development is just gonna instantly tilt to the
No,
south.
I understand.
So kind of like the slide that Brandon alluded to, there will be portions of the existing road that's out there today that will be higher and lower. We need to introduce some of that up and down to go to the new catch basins, the red shown on the screen here.
I want all my water in Dan's yard.
That's already in the plan. That's the only thing we've designed so far. Yeah, we want to make sure that when we're designing it, that we have a spot that we can blend in. Also, if in older service pipes that went into your yard, there's likely a dip in your sidewalk where that service pipe went. There's a dip in your yard, so we're going to come through and we're going to regrade the streets, and we want to blend it so your whole yard drains out to the street. Without that, we need those elevations to get the street to drain. The sidewalk has to be higher than the back of the curb. And so if your yard has an indention in it because that old service trench settled, it's imperative that we get that grading easement, because we'll go with some black dirt back up in your yard, and we're going to make sure that your yard actually flows all the way to the street.
And that's at your cost, not mine.
That would be totally part of the project cost and blended into the project. It would not be, we put more dirt on your yard, so you're getting a higher assessment. That's just overall a part of the project. And I would say it's the majority of the neighborhood that has that experiencing. And the other thing that I was going to point out is the intent with this project is that we'll come in, we'll put the first thing that happens is when you build the streets is you put the curb and gutter in. And then we're going to come back in, and after the class 5 goes down, you put the curb and gutter in, and then you come and you fill it with asphalt in between it. We're going to leave the top lift of asphalt down on the curb for a few years. So there's going to be a lip on the end of the curb that the asphalt's going to go down to. Now, again, we're creating these low points. So in the low points where the inlets are, we will put some mix around those inlets enough that the water that's getting down to those low points into the curb, into the inlets. But you're going to have a lip on your gutter for a few years, because we want that all the settlement that occurs, because we're putting in all new sanitary sewer and water main and storm sewer pipes and services into your lots. You cannot design it or construct it without settlement occurring. There's going to be some settlement that occurs. And so this is pretty commonplace in other areas of the Fargo-Moorhead area. Moorhead, I believe, leaves it off for 5 years or until 80% of a new development has developed. Obviously, this is an existing neighborhood, so the intent would be we would leave that off and then come back after a few years when we know that that settlement has occurred. So that way, if we have to fix some dips in the curb, fix some dips in where settlement has occurred over these trenches, we can come back after, I would say in 5 years, 95% of the settlement has probably been, that has occurred on these services. So say it's 5 years from now that we come back, we fix the low points, and then we bring in that final lift of asphalt that gets down. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a revitalized roadway again at that point in time, but now all that settlement has occurred, so you're going to, 15 years from now, you're gonna look at the roadway and you're not gonna see as much of that settlement that would occur as if we just came in and put it all in and just let it settle out again. Because again, 5 years from now, you're gonna see all the services, you're gonna see trench settlement everywhere. That's a way to mitigate that, whereas, in the ultimate goal is after we get that final lift put down in the future, that you'll have a very smooth surface that you can work with, and it'll stay that way because most of the settlement has already occurred.
I have a question of the houses that are on 7th that face north.
Yeah.
Our access to the heights and such are in the front of our houses, not the sides like some other people's. Are we considered as part of this assessment as well?
So are you one of the two houses that is not shaded in the?
I'm shaded, but I'm on 7th. And so I face north, and that's not included in the previous slide.
Are you abutting Oak Street on this side?
Yeah, I'm on Oak and 7th.
So south of 7th and west of Oak on the corner?
Yes, yep.
Okay. When the assessment district was created, that house was included in the assessment district, as were the other two houses that are not shaded. Those two houses that are not shaded both get all of their sewer and water services from 7th. And at the time, we did not know where those came from. So that property that you're describing right there is not intended to be part of this assessment, have an assessment from this project. Other than there is potential, just because there's some side yard, it would only be a portion of the street that would potentially be assessed. But
Can it be included
can it be included in?
in this project? Because I've had my pipes broken.
Oh,
I've already had private plumbing come out and
to
take
do the utilities on 7th?
the piping that you guys were describing. Mine have that, and they are broken.
So we don't have any improvements along 7th included in this project, other than our sanitary sewer that runs up Oak Street. Because there is no storm sewer in the neighborhood, and we're gonna be putting these storm sewer pipes in, what we found is that the sanitary sewer that is on Oak Street is fairly shallow. It starts at approximately, 5-6 feet deep or so? And so the depth of the storm sewer pipe is gonna be a conflict with those services. So we need to lower the sanitary sewer on Oak Street, which means that we're gonna have to go back to the lift station to tie that sewer main into that lift station. So there will be a little bit of work on 7th Street as a part of the project, but that's all gonna be occurring east of your house. We don't have anything happening in front of your house.
When do you anticipate breaking ground?
As soon as the frost lifts out in the spring. Well, I'm sorry, we're opening bids in March. We would award bids in March. It would probably take until April to get contracts in place with the contractor and get the pre-construction meeting done, ordering supplies, things like that. It would probably be May by the time that we would expect that work would start.
Real quick, I just wanted to follow up on your item, not to speak for you, Dan, but in that CIP, 7th Avenue is identified as another,
Hotspot.
yes, priority project. And so 7th Avenue is identified in that CIP in the upcoming years, but not specifically. Westwood.
So we'll have to pay for 7th Avenue
That's
also.
what I was just gonna ask. We're gonna get this one and the next one?
We haven't determined any, it's just been identified as a project. There hasn't been any.
Yeah, I don't know, it took 65 years to get this one done, but 7th Avenue is a main artery.
It is.
Yes.
So there are some studies that need to be done as far as what the size of the piping needs to be for the storm sewer, because the whole core area, generally speaking, is under designed for storm sewer sizing. So there's a lot more that needs to go into studying that. So we don't have any answers tonight for that project.
He's asking you, are we going to be assessed for Seventh Avenue? Being we are that close to Seventh Avenue.
We will have to be assessed for it because that's our only access out.
I can't speak to that tonight. I don't know.
How about this? How many assessments can I get done in a year?
Or
On a major
in
project,
No, in a 10-year
In a
period.
10-year period, I mean, we're already paying for 13th Avenue. When that came through, when they took the bridge out. Right? And Main Avenue is a different area. But I heard once at a city meeting years ago that we're only going to be assessed for 2 projects at a time.
That's not correct.
So I can be assessed for 12 projects at a time.
But
And
however,
let's get the whole city involved in rebuilding our area.
the whole city is paying 70% of construction.
Make it pay.
That's another-
Get a hold of that legacy money.
We're trying.
I'm sorry.
Bird dogs.
Can I have you go back a few slides where you were just at a second ago, where,
You'll have to stop me.
right there. So we're on the corner of Elm and Ninth, where you have the big, and I know you said you're not looking at designs yet. Is there thoughts of making that narrower on those bigger corners, or what, you know what I mean? What is your?
So we've got the bulb outs on the south side of 9th. The intent is that it would remain as such.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What you see right here is a pretty good estimate of what it's gonna look like as far as what the shape of the roadway is gonna look like. The green is sanitary, the blue is water, and the red is the storm sewer. So that has been basically vetted a bit through a feasibility study. Yep. We looked at narrowing it and actually just making curves, but the driveways ended up being 100 feet long or whatever. I mean, it would have
Or
been.
snow.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I have my sump pump comes out underneath my driveway and comes all the way to the street. So somehow you're gonna have to cut that off, I suspect.
It will be impacted, yes.
Yeah.
So
But
then,
that's the feedback that we want to hear tonight, so we can locate that and be aware of it.
yeah, it comes right to the street.
Yeah, and when it turns on, it pumps it out into the curb and gutter. So yeah, we're gonna have to deal with it. How that needs to be figured out with the design of it, but.
There's about a $15,000 range in the assessments. On what basis are those assessments identified?
So the methodology of how to determine the assessments is your sanitary and sewer is on it per each basis. Everybody has a service. For example, your water main is also, your water services are on a per each basis. But the street costs are assessed on a linear footage basis. The storm sewer is assessed on an area, how many square feet that you have. That's our standard methodology that we use for assessments, where it starts. And that's the part that I mentioned when we go to the Special Assessment Commission meeting, that we would be presenting to them. This is the means that we determine the special assessments, and they have the ability to give us feedback on if they disagree with that.
I live in a corner lot with 110 square feet of frontage on Elm and 125 on 8th Avenue. Do I get the bingo?
So one thing with the,
No,
one thing with the front footages that get long, especially on corner lots like that, what we can do is we can look at your side yards, because it's not fair when you're on the corner to assess the entire thing. We would do something that's more comparable to lots nearby you to be fair within the neighborhood.
It's a square lot.
It's a square one?
Yeah.
Which lot are we looking at?
Lot 2, lot 1.
Are you on a corner?
801 Elm.
He's in the corner.
So
Up there in the white.
yeah, so what he's talking about is you've obviously got you'll have a front footage, and then there's a side yard footage also of street.
Right.
And one of the adjustments that they make is they subtract out a certain portion of that side yard footage to make it more equitable compared to others, because you still have one driveway, one garage, things like that. So we're not adding up all of the entire curb and gutter, but there is a component of side yard to it, but we don't take the entire distance.
some of those factors and adjustments are applied, but like Dan has said a few times, the Special Assessment Commission makes those final determinations.
Well, our property taxes with the assessments included are all going to double at this particular point. We just received our tax statement to be submitted by what, March or February? Right. That amount is going to be about equal, or the payment for the assessment is going to be greater, I'm trying to say, than the current tax statement that includes assessments. Yippee.
I don't know how much your taxes are, but the estimates that we gave were, depending on whether we get funding, grant funding or not, was, I believe, approximately $2,000 to upwards of $2,400 per year.
That's still greater than what we're paying.
And I guess I haven't taken a look at what the property taxes are for any of the properties.
Have you looked at that on whole? Is that something you guys should look at? Being a lot of the people in the neighborhood are retired, limited incomes.
It comes down to the guideline for assessing local reconstructs that was passed with the 24 CIP. We looked at that basically when originally we were assessing 60% of a project. And the commission said, we can't do that to these people. So they literally cut it in half and we moved to a 70% city cost, 30% assessed cost. And that was for that. If you take a look, when you just take a look at the overall cost of a project, you consider, let's just take a look in the new developments, for example. You take an average lot where the contractor has just open digging and they install all new curb, gutter, all the things that we're doing here. You get to assessments in the neighborhood, sometimes, 50, I've seen upwards to $80,000 for the new developments. What we're doing here is actually harder and more costly to do than that. So, I mean, if you were to take a look, if the average assessment is $30,000 and we're assessing 30% of a project, you can extrapolate that out to say it's $100,000 a lot by the time that you add in the cost of what it takes to reconstruct one of these projects. So it's a lot more expensive to do this work than it does that work. So that's where, what we did was we took a look at what other cities are doing. And Fargo does beat us a little bit. They tried to increase their special assessments, but it was turned down. I believe they're at about, don't quote me on this, but I believe they're at about 18 to 20% on their special assessments for this. But if you take a look at Grand Forks, other cities of like size, Dilworth does 50%. I can speak to other smaller cities in Minnesota, they're 50%, 60%, things like that. So the 70% that our commission landed on is actually, outside of looking at Fargo, is a very favorable percentage compared to others.
25 as long as you go.
What's that?
25 as long as you go. Go 30.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our standard has been 25 years.
Certain stipulations, can you strap it out? I mean, like you said, some of the older people ain't gonna make it 30 years.
Well,
Somebody else.
What's lower is what they gotta pay.
I'll say this, 25 years, generally speaking, is the limit because the type of bond that we take out is a 25-year bond. And it's tied to the length and term of the bond a bit, but we don't extend it beyond that 25 years. Because again, 15 years from now, we're going to be coming back and saying we need a mill and overlay 15 to 20 years from now. And that's going to stack on top of this. To extend it out even longer than 25 years, now you're talking extending it into basically almost a life cycle of the road.
You replace differences between asphalt and concrete.
Concrete's more expensive.
Over a 25-year deal? Non-replacement, non-milling,
Right.
non-overlays?
We could,
Just a comparison, I guess, for a contract.
we could look at a bid alternate of bidding a concrete roadway, but what I can say is your assessments are gonna be higher than what I'm presenting tonight. Now, over the course of the next 50 years, I do believe that the life cycle costs of a concrete roadway generally speaking, are less than an asphalt roadway because asphalt deteriorates. You have to do mill and overlays and you reconstruct them sooner. However, is there a want to have higher special assessments and a concrete roadway in the road? I haven't heard.
I think all options should be looked at.
It does make the project more expensive to pay the consultant to design it in two different ways.
Yeah, I understand that.
So it would be, and then you're gonna go with one or the other.
Right.
And what I've done in residential neighborhoods, typically speaking, I've done reconstructs in a number of different cities where we've looked at it. And 100% of the time, it's always come down to the hearing where a commission meeting where we're presenting the cost of the project and the community shows up and says, I want the cheaper one. And so we ended up spending money designing a concrete roadway as well.
Has the commission been receptive to what you've been put in front of them?
Everything you've been shown tonight was presented to the commission. And what I can say, if I could take a liberty and paraphrase what the commission's reaction to it was, is this hurts because that's a lot of money. But what I can say is it hurt so bad they weren't willing to do it before, and they said we need to. Mayor Dardis said at the commission meeting when I first was bringing this up, he said we need to pay more, even if it means that we're doing less projects because these people just can't afford that. And so that's where I got the mandate, went back, came forth with the 2024 CIP, lowered the assessed rate from the 60% down to the 30%. And even though it's still a tough bite to swallow, the commission recognizes their sanitary sewer is about to collapse.
Right.
So we have to do something, and it's gotten to that point. If I could paraphrase the commission and hopefully not get in trouble because some of them are also say that. But that's how it basically went.
Is the SAS board, are they pretty open to changing assessments, or are they pretty much locked into what they're thinking is? In your experience in the past?
In my experience in the past, there have been isolated incidents where they take a look at something and say, I don't agree because that person is paying way more than that person. I think we need to pay more on that one. I have seen that in the past. I've never seen the Special Assessment Commission saying, we just need to lower all of these by 10% or anything like that. It's what I've seen is more on a case-by-case basis. They'll take a look at an individual circumstance and make a determination on a lot or two that seem to be disproportionately assessed compared to others.
And I will just add, the Special Assessment Commission, they make the recommendation to the City Commission. They ultimately make the decision and certify those assessments. So the Special Assessment Commission takes the methodology that we collaboratively work with the city, recommend to them, they review it. The hearing is held, and then that ultimately goes to the City Commission for approval to certify those. So at the end of the day, the City Commission is the one who approves that item. We've been meaning to get to a question over here.
So where I live, I'm kind of feel like, okay, so I live on that corner house there, that 5 or the one with like right in the middle, so right where you go by Ninth Avenue.
Inside corner.
Inside.
He's on the convex corner, the north.
Okay.
That, you got that. So with my house, I feel like I'm gonna be for like 2 years, kind of like not be able to park my driveway just because it's gonna be coming from that side, Elm and Oak, that it's gonna, everything's traffic's gonna be right parking there and all that. So how is that gonna, like,
And then,
you know where I'm looking?
yep. You are in a corner where, there's more right of way and space, potential, material storage and whatnot. So yeah, that is, those properties on that corner and the opposite corner is something that we're gonna have to take into consideration. But I will say with the space, there might be opportunity where you're actually able to get to your house more than others on a narrow straightaway.
And are they gonna shut down both at Oak and Elm for people in the summer who wanna go to the park? Are they gonna shut the road down for people to get into the park entrance?
The park entrance. So we have that preliminary with the park district to discuss those access issues. They do have, access, they can park off 13th Avenue, it's a walk to this park. But, we are moving this week actually further with the park district to discuss, park district might actually be an opportunity where the residents can potentially park there. And that could actually be utilized, as a close access point to get to their homes. So those conversations are ongoing, any impacts to the park district, obviously they need to approve and whatnot, so I'm not speaking for them by any means, but it has been considered not only for staging area, but also access concerns and, we don't wanna introduce any safety risks or anything with this project.
The property owner, are we liable if something breaks, like when you guys are doing like in a couple of these statements in here, it's a little, like what if something breaks on our property, so when you guys are,
So-
they're doing.
Kind of as Dan described,
Yeah.
Foundation,
Foundation.
driveways, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was a slough over there at one time, so everything moved.
Mm-hmm.
So when they did that, lift station in the park behind my house, I mean, tore up my attached garage door. It hammered that much in my yard, it cracked something, attached garage. When you sign all this, you're taking all liability for your contractor to do more damage to our property.
I will say, as Dan alluded to, that, those documents, anything that our project disturbs is to be restored. So if we're not directly impacting that, that's not the project impacting it, but like if you crack your driveway, if a piece of equipment goes across it, that would be fixed.
Would they do the whole driveway or would they just do partial?
If anybody thinks they would jack in that midnight out on the driveway.
Signals.
They're gonna put it back in the.
Yes.
No, it was,
That's kind of like a sewer service thing that discussed.
Try to get us for people.
but in general, if there's a damage, go back to that nearest joint to make sure it's the proper, connection made.
You said something about a sleeve when you, were gonna work with the water main that goes to the house.
The sewer.
Or is-
He had, that gentleman had mentioned a sleeve. There is trenchless relining that can be done in services. That's not part of this project. We're reconstructing and putting in new pipe up to the point of connection. There is trenchless technology that a contractor that does relining could come in and actually reline your sewer service.
But as they come through and put the new in, obviously they're taking out the clay, right?
Correct. Yep.
As soon as they keep going back, they're never gonna go back to that clay. It's impossible.
It's
Exactly.
If it's in good shape, I've
You
seen
can
it.
only move it so far, eventually once you open it, that whole stuff's just gonna crumble all the way to the house, right?
What we found with services is that they make a firm coat, that you can slide on it and you can fit it down without a lot of pressure. It's not a pressurized pipe. And you can constrict those fern coats to provide a good seal. Yep.
As long as they kind of see.
Yeah, just like the water main, the asbestos cement water main pipe, it is very brittle. So anytime there's a break and Public Works has to go in and fix it, it's not uncommon for them to go attach it and you just broke the next section. And you just gotta keep chasing it until you finally can get it attached.
Keep it together.
Yep. But we do not have any, trenchless, relining.
Who should we contact if we're interested in some of those individual projects, driveway, lighting?
Contact me.
Brendan or Levi, he's listed on all the mailing, so, yeah.
Do we have numbers on our,
Yeah,
if you back up to the introduction sheet, I believe.
yeah. There we go. So, here's the emails, and then
There's the emails.
Levi and ourselves. Yeah.
Hey, Mark, ours, what home? Are we gonna be walking them through other people's yards, like, looking at their trees or things, all that stuff? Or how, like,
So the intent would be that we have kind of an identified route where we deal with not disturbing neighbors. We have seen in other projects that we don't work with. If neighbors are neighborly, sometimes that is the quickest route, obviously through side yard, but obviously there's fences and whatnot. So, not saying it's off the table. That's not on the question, but, for, well, the contractor would suggest.
Any other questions?
Exactly. Gotta start loading the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, currently we were planning to just match high existing. Then I'd like to go higher. So we were planning to match what's there today, so you asked. Yes, yeah.
I won't point out anything additional than what's there. It'll be- Also, we would have to review.
Oh, you're delayed.
Yeah, it is.
Is there any services available for people that are basically handicapped in their homes?
We've talked about that. One of the things that, we're still floating ideas, so none of it is written in stone yet, but like, one of the things that we talked about adding to the project was the contractor has to have an ATV or a gator type of a piece of equipment there. Think of, like an ATV that has 2 seats, a 4-seater, and a little tiny bed in the back type of a thing. You see Bobcat or Gators or whatever, something of that nature. And we would tell the contractor that from, say, 7 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night, there needs to be a phone number provided to every resident that, say you buy a generator and you gotta park in the park and you gotta carry a generator to your house or something like that. The contractor there'd be a phone number to call the contractor. He would have one of those on site. He would show up at your house, drive you to your car or meet you at your car, help you load your groceries. We do want to know if there is any kind of a special need for access. We definitely want to, absolutely, we definitely want to take that into consideration. And now, can I say at 11 o'clock at night, is that service available? Probably not, but say 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., that's the intent. And then the other thing is that as much as possible, if it's hopefully a dry construction season, there's a lot of it that, you see that you can still drive down the clay streets and they can create a little bump out to still drive up into your house. So even though the street might be tore up in front of you, if there's no active work going on right at that spot, there is opportunity still potentially to drive there. Now, if it's raining and it's slick or they're working, they haven't compacted it yet, there's going to be situations that you can't. But if it's a dry day, we're going to tell the contractor that they need to keep the clay that's out there fairly level, so it's drivable by a passenger vehicle, and they can take some of the millings and that when they mill up the road and remove the roadway, there's going to be some spoil that they can use to create some spalls that go from the clay into a driveway. So just because it's being constructed, a lot of the time you're not accessible to your house, but some of the time we're hoping if weather conditions provide that we can provide access to it. And then outside of that, if we can put provisions in the contract that can arrange rides to and from cars, help with groceries, they'll be responsible for gathering your garbage can, bringing it out to 7th, if that's where we're going to have the collection.
Right, so that'll be part of the contract.
That will be part of the contract, yeah.
Contractors that work on this project, this is a common place. I mean, we've had projects where we actually have a golf cart on.
Well, Bobby could fit into a golf cart.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, there's a lot of ideas that contractors come up with to help, accommodate. The driver just gets you right over, put the groceries in the bucket. It's things of that.
It can be done.
Yes, it can be done.
I'm more concerned about an ambulance.
Right.
2 weeks ago, I had a heart attack, so I had an ambulance and a police car and a fire truck in front of my house. What's gonna happen next? I promised maybe, but at 91, I never know.
Well, I'm gonna hold you to that promise.
And how will we do that?
But that was one of the slides, is that we do need to figure out and coordinate with emergency services what to do during it. Obviously, if we've got an open trench, we're gonna have to get it figured out somehow to get access there.
And each stage of the project, those entities will be notified, hey, we're transitioning to this phase, we're transitioning to this phase. So,
I'm on Elm, so I'm a little bit better because I face west.
okay.
So, I can take out a piece of that fence back there, maybe do something.
But no, I mean, not only emergency services, but yeah, sanitation, garbage, postal service, yeah. It's a heavy coordination effort, you know, I think everybody can, you know, agree with that, so.
It's not fun. It's gonna be inconvenient, there's no doubt.
Not everybody's on the internet either.
No.
Great. Yeah, correspondence, a lot of the correspondence will be done by mail or knocking on doors.
Yep, and each of those letters, there will be contact information, not only from Warren Engineering, but, city staff as well. Jerry and Levi will be listed on there a lot. Brandon and I will be, you'll see our faces during the summer.
You'll see mine.
Yeah.
He doesn't work anymore.
I see Josh is here, so, it's a communication effort from start to finish, so. I will say before people, start to kind of trickle out, we can continue to answer questions in a small group setting. Just a reminder, Levi is here, he has copies of all the temporary easements. So if you are comfortable signing anything, he does have those. If not, we'll pick this back up. But,
Just the grand road.
Sorry.
The grand road, grand deed or the easement. And, the grand road is solely responsible for moving all fences and trees.
Yeah,
As a legal document, right?
well, yeah, it is definitely, and I'll tell you, we are not expecting any homeowners to remove fences or replace fences or anything, even though it says that, so we'll get, maybe the best thing to do is for us to rewrite it and resend it.
Yes, that way it's.
Yep, yeah, we'd rather.
It's clear with everybody.
That's, so, like I said,
So I was just gonna say, on behalf of the city, we want to thank everybody for showing up today. It's very helpful. And we want to hear all these concerns. Again, please contact us. After tonight. Thank you for attending. So we'll stick around and answer questions. Thank you.
Well, over at all of them. Now, 7 weeks. You're gonna make it all.